Kenneth Okonkwo don expose the Supreme Court judgment they give on top Peter Obi versus Tinubu. When then they cry, say make them release the judgment document, CTC, they no agree release them for over how many weeks. Finally, they can't release them. Now, Kenneth Okonkwo don't go read them. Can't discover, say, waiting they inside the document, they different from waiting and talk for inside court. Can't they talk, okay, now, who can't bring, wait, in short, man, not talk too much. Listen to them, see the way they bring out time. Expose all those things, all those shenanigans they display, say that they give judgment. Watch video, share, and make other post here, they come.
Lovely to see you again, Kenneth.
Thank you very much for inviting me again. Yeah,
always nice to have you here.
To tune in.
Before we get to the issue of the Supreme Court justices and the new nominations, let's start with the judgment on the Labour Party and Peter Obi's legal challenge to the result of the 2023 presidential election. I understand you have now received the certified true copy of that judgment, all 1.5 pages of it. What do you make of it? I understand that you think there are discrepancies between what was said in court and what is contained in that certified copy. Tell us more.
Oh, well, let me confirm that we received the CTC of the judgment. Our legal team alerted us to this. Let me also confirm that the lead judgment as delivered by Justice John Inyang-Okoro was exactly what he announced at the court. And then, while saying this, it will be important to educate us on what constitutes a legal and constitutional judgment by any court. First of all, the court has no power to insert in its written judgment any decision that it did not announce in the court. And I'm talking about section 36, subsection 3 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. If a court does that, it has egregiously infringed on the fundamental human right of a party to fair hearing. The section provides every proceeding of the court, including the decision of the court, shall be announced in the open court, and that's pronounced. Then, by section 294, subsection 1, every decision of the court must be in writing, meaning whatever you are pronouncing or announcing in the court must have been in writing. And after that, the court becomes functus officio. You do not have any right to add or remove anything on it. I want to point out also that any court that is constituted by more than a judge means that the decision of the court will now be done by majority of the members. The Supreme Court was constituted by 7 judges in our appeal, and the leading judgment was very clear. They said every issue in Obi's case has been, according to Justice Muhammad Lawal Gaba, he said, has been comprehensively, completely, effectively, and totally dealt with in Atiku's case, and there was no reason for them to reiterate anything again. That was what Justice Inyang said, and he even went further to berate the appellants that they ought not to have even brought issue 4, because according to them, in the earlier case of PDP and INEC, they have taken decision. Now, reading the entire CTC judgment of the 7 judges, I was surprised to see some issues in the judgment of 3 justices of the Supreme Court that was not announced in the court. I was there in the court. The issue of forfeiture of $460,000, which was proceeds of narcotics. Now, this is the Broadway judgment goes. In any judgment that involves majority of judges, they must sit before the judgment day. They will elect the person that will write the leading judgment. And in that leading judgment, all issues must be decided. And it is when more numbers of the judges concur to the issues. That is how leading judgment comes. Now, those 3 judges that wrote the forfeiture issue in their judgment, where did they get that issue from? Because it was never mentioned in the leading judgment. Because you either concur or you dissent. Now, assuming without conceding that they even announced it, 3 justices, they are minority. Because it would have been better they didn't even mention anything about it. So does it mean now that the majority of the judges have now ruled against the 3 judges? So this judgment, as far as I'm concerned, broke every issue of the ingredients of a judgment of a court.
Well, you know, you were in court. You were part of the legal team, so you know better than me what happened. I'm looking at that certified true copy that they sent to you now, because we have it. It says that the 7 issues raised and canvassed by each of the 2 appellants in their respective briefs or arguments are not only identical, but materially and substantially and essentially the same.
Absolutely.
Right.
They even call it sister appeal.
Right.
And these are the 4 judges that upheld this perfectly and accurately. And I'm talking about Justice John Inyang-Okoro. I'm talking about Justice Saulawa. I'm talking about Justice Tijani Abubakar. And I'm talking about Justice Mohammed Lawa Gaba. 4 of them. Then the other 3 justices, I do not know where they got the issue of forfeiture from. That is an insertion. And that is very dangerous. Because, like I said, it is illegal and unconstitutional for you to insert in a written judgment a decision that was not announced publicly to the court. So the 5 criteria for you to judge a judgment: 1, it must have been announced in the court; 2, it must be written; 3, it must be in public; 4, once the court is done, the court is functions official. None of them. Then 5, but after the judgment, 7 days is what the court has to give the copies to the parties. It was not done. None.
Right. But what about the lead judgment by John Inyang-Okoro, which said at the end of it that on the whole this appeal lacks merit and is hereby dismissed?
Absolutely.
And the appeal is dismissed. I mean, does that comprehensively cover it?
No. The issues of forfeiture and some other issues we are not mentioned at all in the appeal of article. So there's no way it could have been comprehensively dealt with.
So what happens now? Is there a process for seeking clarification and possibly rectification and restitution?
Now, the Chief Justice of Nigeria ought to summon an emergency meeting, because this has impugned the character of the judiciary worldwide.
But what I mean is are you going to apply for that? Are you going to write to them to say, well, these are the discrepancies and we demand... because let's face it, those justices are supposed to deliver justice, and you have a right to ask and ensure that justice is delivered.
Good. Without prejudice to further actions that we may undertake, recall that the decision of the Supreme Court, unfortunately, is final by Section 235. But as a minister in the Temple of Justice, I am worried that this kind of judgment should never be a precedent in Nigeria. And the Chief Justice of Nigeria has the duty and the right to proclaim it as such.
Yeah, but would you request of him
to do that? We don't need
that?
to request it. In 1979...
Or draw his attention to.
In 1979 or thereabout.
Right.
The Supreme Court gave a judgment in the Shagari presidential issue. And they even announced in the judgment that this should not be taken as a precedent. And it is very sound in law, because Montesquieu, the father of spirit of laws, made it clear. He said a precedent can only be established when judgment is conformable to the dictates of the law. That is the only time you can fix a judgment and say it should be a precedent. And he warned that if you do not give judgment based on law, then it will become the opinion of the judges. And there is no way the people will know exactly what the obligations are.
Right. Okay.
This particular judgment should not be a precedent in Nigeria. Everything is wrong about it.
Okay, well, we're going to have to move on from there and watch and see what happens next. Let's turn to the substantive matter of the nomination of new Supreme Court justices, 11 of them. What's the background to this? Because there were a number of retirements and deaths and so on, weren't there? That's why it depleted.
Yes. Now, the process of appointing a Supreme Court judge starts from the Federal Judicial Service Commission by paragraph 13 AII. He said the Federal Judicial Service Commission shall advise the National Judicial Council. Now by paragraph 21 AI of part 1 of the third schedule of the 1999 Constitution as amended, he said the National Judicial Council shall, based on the advice of the Federal Judicial Service Commission, recommend to the President, and by section 231(1) of the Constitution, the President shall appoint based on the recommendation of the NJC, then subject to the approval of the Senate.
Yes, I understand that, but what I'm wondering is why did it get to this? I mean, why was there such a big gap?
Well,
you see what I mean? Because
incompetence and inefficiency of the leadership of Nigeria. There was no reason for it to have reached this level. Government should be proactive. You don't allow people to die before you begin to prevent their death. Supreme Court has
or prevent the gap that would occur as a result.
Supreme Court has been lamenting that they are being overburdened by the litigious nature of Nigeria, and yet it degenerated to this level. The former president was there, and these gaps were there, and he could not just sit down to do the right thing. That is why we are saying that Nigeria needs effective and efficient leadership.
But isn't it for the, I mean, wouldn't it be seen as interference? I mean,
Yes.
Wouldn't it be for the Judicial Council and the other judiciary sort of commissions and so on to come up with that recommendation? I mean, with the Chief Justice sitting on all those commissions and councils, and then make it, I mean, was it for the President to do that?
Well,
because obviously,
like
the Supreme Court,
have,
if the Chief Justice knows that his justices or his fellow justices are overburdened, the pressure should be on them to make the recommendation.
well, without sounding defensive of the judiciary, you know, the judges do not talk. We in the bar talks for them. So I would say, without mincing words, that they in different fora have been saying they need more judges. They need more judges. And for me, that's about the best they can do, because it will end in recommendation. They can only recommend.
Yeah, but that recommendation could have come a few years back.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That if they did it, then there's no way you would know or not know.
Right, okay, I see what you mean. Well, I mean, I would imagine that it would have been a public thing.
Good.
It's not a hidden thing.
So there will be a kind of positive body language from the executive, because the three branches are involved in the appointment of judges.
Yeah, well, actually,
you initiate the, you know.
Actually, you may have a point in what you're saying, because we still see some political interference that sometimes stalls the appointment process of judges. I mean, at the moment, there appears to be lots of frustration in Edo State, for instance, where I understand that from reports that Governor Obaseki has still not sworn in judges approved by the NJC since July. And it's been suggested that the governor is refusing to inaugurate the judges because they are possibly not the candidates of his choice. I mean, I wonder what your thoughts are on that sort of thing.
Oh, well, that's absolutely, and ironically, and I'm sorry to say it, it is within his constitutional right. That is why I say we need efficient and honest leaders. And again, when it comes to the issue of appointment of judges, and rightly so, the three arms, we are made to have a part in it. And the reason is simple. Judiciary is the only leadership that does not derive its power directly from the people. And it's because of the qualifications needed, which cannot be found at random. You will need to have sound knowledge of the law according to Justice Daltido. You need to be a man of honor. You need to have integrity, and you need to have the spirit of industry, hard work. So these things, you locate the people and appoint them accordingly. So in order to ensure checks and balance, that's why the three arms are involved in it. And the bottom line of it is that we need efficient and honest leaders, because most times the reasons they adduce for not doing those things are selfish, not patriotic. So the checks and balances I support, because they don't derive their power directly from the people. But the reasons that these people do not efficiently conduct their work, I don't support.
Yeah, I see the point you're making.
Yes. Another thing I would have to say is that the public, they are not shut out from the appointment of judges, especially those of the high ranking, because anything that is subject to approval of the Senate, they ought to allow the public, through public hearings, to bring up their own suggestions and their own reservations. So the public is not shut out in this. So, and I say it, the Senate must have to allow Nigerians who have information about these judges to table the information freely to the people, so that these men can be interrogated. Because we really need a departure from what is happening now.
Well, what about the call for justices to be selected not just from the bench, but from academia and, you know, senior, well-respected lawyers, etc.? That doesn't seem to be happening today, though it used to happen in the past in Nigeria.
Let me state it clearly that I support the fact that judges should not be proceeding from High Court to Court of Appeal to, as a matter of fact, it makes us to have always aged judges that will come to the Supreme Court and have 6 months to stay, 1 year to stay. And you can see that rate of, you know, mobility is not funny. All these judges now, before 5 years, all of them are gone.
So there's a high rate of attrition.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, what we need the wisdom of Solomon in these judges. You can find it from outside, even the judges. It happens in America. Attorney generals have been appointed to the Supreme Court.
Well, it used
bench.
to happen in Nigeria. I mean, Taslim Elias was I think he was an academic.
Absolutely.
And you know, you also had
taken to the Supreme Court.
other
His judgments today still are unassailable. And I think, if I am correct, Charles Oputa was taken from the High Court. He was a CJ. The normal thing then was, when you have reached the rank of a CJ, anytime they want to take you up, they take you straight to the Supreme Court. These things should return. We need men of character, competence, and capacity. They mustn't come from the Court of Appeal. Because you're just limiting yourself to maybe 40 or thereabout members.
Yeah.
So I support 100% our going back to the basis. That is the international practice.
It is.
And like I said, in America, you choose attorney generals at times to go to Supreme Court. You choose from the judges, from High Court judges, and that is it.
And of course, all this is happening at a time when confidence in the judiciary is at a very low ebb.
Yes.
What sort of responsibility does that place on the shoulders of the new Supreme Court justices?
They should just know that they have to redeem the image of this court.
I mean, they haven't been confirmed, but
yes,
you know, they've been nominated.
Yes, and my prayer is that if there is any of them that is a person of questionable integrity, the person should not be confirmed. Because one of the criteria is that you must be a person of unquestionable integrity. I want you to understand the difference. You may have integrity, but if it is questionable, you are not qualified, because the standard of judgment for a judge is different from that of an ordinary human being. So if there is any likely perception on the minds of the citizens that you are questionable, you remain questionable, and you should not be allowed to get in there. Justice must not only be done, but must be seen. So also in the appointment of judges, perception should be the standard of measurement, not reality. Because when people go to court, if they perceive they are not going to get justice, the integrity of the judge is already questionable. So they must have to go beyond the reality of he has not been convicted for any offense, this and that. No. Is his integrity questionable? He's not qualified.
Right. Well, what about the efficiency beyond of the judges themselves? I mean, the efficiency of the machinery of justice and the way the courts are run, because a lot of these judges still have to handwrite their judgments, which is absolutely primitive, isn't it?
I agree with you, but it's not an excuse for you not to be delivering justice. It can only delay your judgment, but cannot induce you to deliver judges that are not based on justice. So that's not any reason. That does not mean I am one person that supports the technological advancement of our courts. We need to depart from the long hand.
Yeah, but you're saying that it is not
an excuse
but
for them to deliver injustice.
Well, I mean, the point is that apart from the fact, I mean, if you've got judges handwriting their notes, I mean, apart from how tedious that can be, particularly for older people that you're referring to, I mean, it's a threat to justice, isn't it? Because of the numbers of mistakes and errors.
It is not.
That could happen. I mean, you might mishear someone, miswrite something.
In the Supreme Court. We had the Oputas, we had the Kayode Shaws. They were on long hands. It did not threaten their sense of justice. And so, long hand has nothing to do with your integrity quotient. It's not an excuse whatsoever.
And on that rather wise note, let me say that it's always a pleasure to have you here, Kenneth Okonkwo, and I hope one day we'll see you on the Supreme Court bench.
Well, one thing I think I know, that I don't think I want to be a judge.
Well, we'll see what happens in a few years' time.
Thank you.
Kenneth Okonkwo is a lawyer, Nollywood star, and spokesperson for the Labour Party's Presidential Campaign Council. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
So, talking about Nigerian judiciary is almost like a waste of time. Yesterday, I think they announced that one of the appeal court judge, according to the news, they said he was accused of taking bribe to uphold Dapo Abiodun of APC. And that's the same Dapo Abiodun that they say maybe whether his son is part of the judge or something like that. I don't know. But, they said he's about to be promoted to the Supreme Court when this thing happened. Guess what? He's now going to meet the Supreme Judge himself. So people were now saying, yeah, good for him, serves him right. People were kind of happy, celebrating that the man died. So the question was, people were like, so their own people was like, look at the way Nigerians are behaving. Why will you be celebrating when somebody, And then people said, you can't just say people shouldn't celebrate. The life you lived, the way you made people feel with your judgment is what will live after you. My English teacher told me that there is a saying, don't know if it's credited to him or not, but that there is a saying that he who lives not after death never lived. Your legacy, your integrity will speak louder when you leave this world. So people must know that, like especially the judges as they are, if you take a bribe from somebody just for you to favor that person in judgment, don't forget that the person you denied justice in favor of another is also a human being that deserves justice. And you take it forcefully because you've been paid or because you've been bribed. And then you switch. Just know that at the end of this world, a day will come You will grasp for oxygen and you will not see, and then you go and meet the Almighty Supreme Judge. Then he will table for you what you've done when we are alive. That time, your money, the money you collected, will not be there to buy you fair judgment. The money you collected as bribe, or the person you took bribe from to favor, will not be there to defend you. You'll be there standing alone, answering your questions alone. So all the judges should go ahead and do whatever they want to do. Nobody is questioning. But I know that no matter what you do, you can never mock God. And when the time comes, we shall all go to face Almighty God. After all, you're not sure for anybody, not even sure for me too. But at least, do things that at least when you leave this world, you'll be remembered for good and not for the evils you've done. That's all I can say.